Alrighty then, let's go to part 2 of the series of FX lenses from Nikon. Try to save you some money so you can avoid either shit lenses, avoid fuzzy lenses, or avoid wall art, meaning useless range lenses that are going to sit there collecting dust that you unnecessarily pissed your money away on, and that you never go to reach for, ever. So let's avoid the shit, the dust collectors, and the crap lenses. Now, I told you to avoid the 35s. Now, you can find the 35 f2 D Nikkor fairly cheap. I give it a half recommendation. You can typically find one for about 100 or 100 and a quarter. I give it a half recommendation. 45mm 2.8's a specialty lens. I seriously doubt you can rationalize or justify that $2,000 lens. You don't need it for anything. 50mm 1.2, fuck that overpriced turd. It's got major distortion all the way up to f2. It's ridiculous to even think about that. Same goes for the 50mm 1.4D. I've got a couple of them and I like them, but they still have distortion up to 1.8 or 2. It's ridiculously expensive, even a used one, so fuck that lens as well. Same thing goes for the 1.4G, which is a plastic piece of shit. Screw that 50mm. And the 50mm 1.4. If you can find one cheap, generally you can't. I actually have not seen one cheap in a dog's age. Do not give it a recommendation either. These you can find $80 all day long. This is where the range starts, where you don't have distortion. I give it a high recommendation. You usually find them used, mint condition, for $80. It's a very cheap lens. It's built like a tank, so you're going to start with 50mm 1.8. Fuck the 50mm 1.8G lens. Just don't even think about it. It's absolutely ridiculous. Special edition. There's no need to even talk about that shit. 55mm 2.8. Now, I give this a good recommendation. It's an older manual lens. It's still made. I give it about a quarter recommendation. That's obviously nowhere near as useful as a 60mm micro Nikkor, but it is insanely sharp, and by God, you can usually find one from a sucker on eBay for about 50 or 60 bucks. I've got 3 of these lenses. They're fucking awesome. They're a lot of fun to play with. They're not extremely useful. It's definitely the short range of absolutely useless, like a I don't know, like a barren woman. If you know, when it comes to childbirth, it's the most useless micro lens you can have, but it's insanely sharp, and it's a normal lens, and it's built like a fucking tank, and you can usually snag it for 60 or 80 bucks. So I do give it a high recommendation for that. 58mm 1.4 specialty lens. You're not gonna be paying $1,700 for that. So screw it. Let's go to the 260mm here. Do not even think about buying the 60mm G lens. A total fucking piece of shit. 60mm 2.8 micro Nikkor D. Have to own it at all costs. You can find it used for $180, $200. New, it's $500. Gotta own it. It's a quad purpose lens, especially on a DX body. It's got a triple purpose on an FX, so FX or DX, a must own lens. Now, this is an old piece of shit. I've talked about the 7300, but this is not the one I'm talking about. This is the shitty non-VR 7300. It's a total fucking turd. Don't even think about buying it. Right underneath that, we have the 7300 4556G with VR vibration reduction. Absolute must buy. You can find them used all day long. $300, minty condition. Kind of must own it. Now, here are 2 shit lenses that are insanely overpriced, and they're as useless as tits on a bull. That's, excuse me, not the 70 to 200, excuse me. I was talking about the 80 to 400. Now, this 7200 2.8, that's the EDVR2 Nikkor for $2,100. Actually, current price, that's sale price. Current price on the lens is $2,200, $2,300, depending on where you get it from. And it's a great lens. The Tamron 70 to 200 VR 2.8 is a far superior lens for $1,500. Most pros agree on that. Price being irrelevant, I would still have the Tamron rather than the 7200 2.8 EDVR2 Nikkor. So you're never going to find one cheap. I'd give it a quarter recommendation as a good lens, or barely that. The 70-200 f4, absolutely freaking not. No way. As I told you, you can find the 70-210 f4 typically for $150 used. That's the old D lens, and you do not want this piece of shit for $1,200. I've owned it. There's nothing special about it, and it's not even made as well as the older 70-210 f4 f4 lens, which isn't made anymore. Unfortunately, those are rather rare and hard to find. These are the lenses I meant to cross off both of, both the 80-400, both the 4.5s. No fucking way. Absolutely ridiculous. Don't even think about it. Underneath here, we have the 80-200. It's $1,200 new. It's $500-600 minty used condition. Excellent choice. It's the poor man's perfect 70-200. Of course, it's 80-200. This lens has been made for a long time. And there's a reason for that, because it's built like a tank. It's awesome. It's the cat's ass. There's nothing really to say about it. I own 6 85mm. Let's go into the 85mm here. These are for glass whores that think they gotta, oh, I gotta own a 1.4 85mm because that shit's expensive, and therefore, no, it's not. It's not. Do not even think about getting the G version. Insanely expensive. $1,500. I've got a 1.4. I did have two 1.4s, but not G's or D's. I still have the D. 85mm 1.4. If you can find an 85mm 1.4D for maybe $300 or $400, which you never will, fine, go ahead and buy it. Otherwise, don't even fucking think about buying a 1.4. The 1.8 is better and far cheaper. 1.8G, even though I despise it for being a plastic bitch, it's not that expensive. It's $450 new. It's superior to the 85mm 2.8. Excuse me, the 85mm 1.8D, which is not current production. So do not recommend that 85mm either. PC Micro Nikkor, it's a specialty expensive lens. We don't even talk about that nonsense. Now we're going to get into the two DC, or what people called defocus control Nikkors. I've got the 135. 105 is an excellent lens. 105 f2 DC Nikkor. Unfortunately, it falls in that bullshit range where it's going to collect dust. It's too short to be useful, and it's too long for its other use. I do not approve of it. Would not get it. If you want the DC Nikkor, do not get the 105, get the 135. It's a waste of money unless you can find one really cheap. That's not to say it's not an excellent lens, but it's a dust collector, and its focal range makes it a bit of a useless turd. Not that the lens is a turd. Its range, to me, makes it useless. It is more useful on a DX camera than it is on an FX. We're talking about FX lenses here and FX bodies. 105mm 2.8 Micro Nikkor. High recommendation. You can find them cheap. There's only two Micro Nikkors that I recommend. That's the 60mm and the 105. Nikon is incredibly proud of their Micro Nikkors. They're hideously overpriced. Do not recommend it unless you could find it cheap. I was actually trying to think of what to say. It's kind of a toss-up. A lot of people love the lens. I despise the lens. The G is definitely a plastic piece of shit. Don't even think about the 105 Micro Nikkor and G unless you could find it incredibly cheap. There's just no damn way. 135mm f2, which I'm going to review next week, which I've got. I'm going to line up all the 135s and talk about them. Awesome lens. Of course, it is $1,300 lens. For $1,200 more than 135mm 2.8 AI Nikkor, is it worth $1,200 more for that extra 5%? If you can justify it, then it is. But there are very few that can justify that. For $1,200 more, for an extra 5%, as far as its performance level, the answer is no. It is nice and sharp, tech sharp all the way up to f2. It's an awesome lens. It is not worth $1,300. You can buy a $150 AI 135mm 2.8 for $150, and then use the rest of that money for 4 or 5 other lenses. So if you can justify it, then it's awesome, but most of you cannot justify it. You want to rationalize owning it, but you can't justify it, so we have to be pragmatic, obviously. So, awesome lens, but I give it a half for the fact that very few people can rationalize owning it. Now, the 180-2.8, which is an awesome lens, however, the new one is $1,000. You can find them used, minty condition, all day long on eBay, typically for $250, $300, $400. So don't even think of spending $1,000 on 180mm 2.8. It makes a perfect long-range or telephoto portrait lens, which doesn't give you the iron face, lack of contrast, and poor color saturation that the 70-200s or 80-200s do. That is what makes it such a beautiful fucking telephoto portrait lens over any of the long tele zooms. I cannot stand the portrait results that are produced by the 70-200s or 80-200s, whether it's Tamron or Nikon. So if you can snag a 180mm, please do. Do not buy a new one for $1,000, obviously. Once again, Nikon, as with Canon, we really only got a dozen lenses that are worth having. And if you've owned them all, and I can try to steer you clear and save you some money, you can see that most things are crossed off here. Let's start up at the top again. 35mm f2, perfect choice. You can usually find one not very useful. 35mm f2, an older one. You find one for like $100, $150. Would not even think of buying a new one. 50mm 1.8 or like an older AI f2 is perfect, or like even a pancake. I'm gonna review a bunch of the 50mm next week or here in the next few days, and I'm gonna line them all up. I'm trying to spread these lens reviews out. Everybody wants me to do every lens review right away and just produce 5 videos every night. Well, I mean, shit, I got stuff to do. I mean, what the hell do you expect? Yeah, grab a 50mm used 1.8 or a 2 for about $50-$60 off of eBay. I mean, shit, I've got 9 50mm. Don't ask me why. 55mm, awesome lens, tack sharp. Kind of the cat's ass. It's shitty as a macro lens. It's manual focus. They still make it because it's so awesome. It's built like a fucking tank, and you can usually find a used one for about $200. I mean, excuse me, not $200, but about $80 or $90. The typical asking is about $100, $150, but I can still find them very often for $50-$60. 60mm, must have it. You're a cross-eyed inbred retard if you don't own a 60mm micro Nikkor, because its extreme usefulness, especially if you own both FX and DX bodies, incredibly useful. Is a bit too short for macro only work, obviously, but it is incredibly useful. Tack sharp, quad purpose lens. Not owning it is almost a sin. 70-300 4.5. That's the one I was telling you about. Is incredibly. I've got 3 of these lenses. I don't know why I do, but 70-300 4.5-5.6 VR. Incredibly sharp focus, fast focus. Excuse me. Is a bit soft between 280 and 300. It's an awesome birding lens or critter lens on a DX camera. You can find them used all day long for $300. Awesome to own. It's sharp, it's very fast, it's quiet, and it's not that heavy. It's an awesome lens to pack around. You want a great tele, FX, or DX to pack around, then you want the 70-300. 70-200 VR, $2,400 lens. It's the VR2 2.8. Do not recommend it. Where am I at here? Here we are. Pardon me, I had to move the camera. 70-200 2.8. Do not recommend it. Recommend the 80-200 2.8 used. $400, $500, $600. News, $1,200. Try to find a used one. This lens has been made forever, and there's a reason why it is still made. It's built like a tank. It's built a lot better than the more expensive. Well, the more expensive 70-200 2.8 is another $1,200, and there's no damn way you can justify that on a new cost. You can justify it, but you can't rationalize it. It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's got vibration reduction, but if you got a fucking $80 monopod, pack around a monopod. You plan on using a 70-200, 80-200, you're not using a monopod, please give me a break, would you? All right. We didn't have vibration reduction back in photography school. Nobody was bitching about the lack of vibration reduction back then. We knew how to fucking handle the camera properly, and we knew how to use a fucking monopod. The only other micro Nikkor would be the 105-2.8, the older one, f2.8. You can find them cheap. It's very well built. as I said, the 135 DC Nikkor f2, excellent lens, $1,300 new. Rather impossible for most people to justify, extremely possible for most people to rationalize. Do you need it? No. Try to grab a 180mm perfect telephoto portrait lens, and it's just incredibly sharp. I mean, as I've told you before, the antichrist of all good pictures is too much glass. The best glass in the world, there's too many elements, ends up fucking up everything. That's one of the main reasons why primes are so beautiful. People think, well, what's magical about primes? It's the lack of glass. Too much glass ruins everything. There are a few other reasons, but that's the main reason. Try to grab a used 180mm 2.8 D lens off of eBay for about $300. So that's section 2, and as you can see on our second list here, we don't have much. The only thing that hasn't been crossed off, I'm trying to save you money, so you're not buying shit that you're pissing money away on that you won't like, will collect dust. You know, you're not going to like it, or you're going to piss your money away unnecessarily thinking, ooh, I got to buy that real wide aperture, I need that. That's awesome because it's expensive, and that's what, you know, please God, you don't need it. I mean, I own most of these, and some of the few that I don't currently own, I have used, and, you know, money being irrelevant, I just, you know, of course, I'm not you. I'm not shooting what you're shooting, but, you know, I'm looking at this from the perspective of, you know, 80-90% of amateur or advanced amateur photographers. You're going to be pissing your money away. I mean, this is a very honest, objective appraisal, not my subject. Well, you know, I like this lens because... No, I'm actually trying to be objective and look at the sense of a generalized amateur or advanced amateur photographer as far as what they should buy, and what is just an unnecessary piss away of money, especially like a lot of the expensive 50mm. There's no way you can justify buying a serious distortion. You're paying $200 more for serious distortion you're not going to use. You're going to stop it down to f1.8 to get a nice sharp picture, then buy the fucking the f1.8 50mm for a few $100s less. You know, buy one for $80 or $90. Why the hell do you think you need a 1.4 50mm if it's got distortion up until 1.8? You know, you paid all that unnecessary money, you know, for nothing. 55mm, awesome, very cheap. 60mm, you gotta buy it, no ifs, ands, or buts. 7300, must own, perfect for FX or DX. 80 to 200, just the cat's ass, cheap as hell. It's been made forever because it is the tank. It is the best money you can throw at telephoto glass, bar none. I don't give a shit who makes it. Used or new, it is the best place. If you want to throw your money at fast glass and a telephoto, get a 80 to 200 2.8. I don't give a fuck if it doesn't have vibration reduction. All those lazy assholes out there, it's like, oh, it doesn't have vibration. Shut the fuck up. And shooting for years and years before vibration reduction existed. Buy a fucking monopod for $60. Even if it's got vibration reduction, which is no good on moving subjects anyway. You need a damn monopod, okay? Oh my god, these assholes. What the hell do you want next? The lens to wipe your fucking ass? Pardon me, I had a burst of anger there. I guess hence the video series, The Angry Photographer. 105 micro Nikkor, good recommendation. Get the old one, the 2.8, as I've said. 135 2 DC Nikkor. Yes, but I seriously doubt 1 in 100 persons can actually justify it. Definitely less than 1 in 100 persons can justify it. Anyway, that is part 2. If I talk too fucking much, then it is my fault, and I apologize. I'm just trying to save you money and show you that most of these lenses, people think, well, you know, I'm going to piss my money away on this. You know, nope, fuck it. I gave you logical, objective reasons why you don't want it. If you don't believe me, that's fine. You know, I don't care. Nobody's forcing you to watch these videos. I am telling you, though, that I own most of these, and the ones that I currently don't own that I've checked off, I have owned and or used extensively. I have. So I'm just trying to save you a buck. And send me an email, whatever, send me $1 or $2 via PayPal. You don't have to do anything. You mean tell me to go screw myself, or whatever you want to do. You don't have to do anything, but I'm just trying to be helpful, alright? I got better things to do with my time. I am trying to be helpful, believe it or not. I'm not saying, oh my god, look at me, I own all these lenses, and no, I'm trying to be helpful because there's nothing else out there like this. I'm actually trying to save you $1. As I've said before, all these lenses is, as confusing as a chameleon in a bowl full of Skittles, and people have a hard time figuring out, where should I piss my money away. You gotta buy crap for your wife and your kids, and fix your car, and pay your bills and shit, and unnecessarily pissing your money away on lenses that, either suck, or fuzzy, or too expensive that you're never going to use that ultra-wide aperture with the distortion, or it's going to be a shit focal length that's going to collect dust on your shelf. It's like, oh, look at that expensive lens over there. I hate it. I never use it. It collects dust. That asshole on YouTube was right. I bought that lens. I didn't listen to him. Now it sits there on my shelf and collects dust. Well, I told you! Like I said, I am being objective. I'm not being subjective. You can contest that if you like. Tell me I'm full of shit. I don't care. Whatever you feel like. And to do a 3rd-part series here really quick. There's just a few lenses left. And then we'll have gone over all the FX lenses. As you can see, there's not much here that isn't crossed off. Which is good. It means we've narrowed the spectrum down. Awesome!